Hey, Nathan, we are recording this on Friday, the 22nd of September. And we're heading into week 2 of the UAW strike against the big three automakers. That would be Stellantis, General Motors, and Ford, of course.
This is the first time all three of them have been hit at the same time
It
in
is
100 years.
It is historic. And we are going to be hopefully discussing what that means for you if you're looking to buy a new car. Should you wait or should you buy one now? But, this is a very fluid situation. So if you're listening to this, let's say on the 23rd or the 24th or the 25th, everything we're about to say may be useless.
It's entirely possible that there could be some major changes. As a matter of fact, recently there was some movement for the UAW in Canada with, I believe, Ford. So these things can change on on a dime. But with that being said, we still are sure that there are going to be some issues with buying new cars and with what's currently going on with the UAW strike, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah. So let's start with that. Then we've got a bunch of other fun issues that we're going to be talking about. We've got some cool cars at the office that I've got some thoughts on, and I've got some thoughts, Nathan, on football and Formula One.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's not a rant, it's a thought.
Okay, it's a thought.
It's a thought. Okay, so let's start with the UAW strike. As you know, it's been almost 2 weeks since the UAW historically struck all three of the automakers. And I think this is important, Nathan. Usually when there's a negotiation that's happening, right, they negotiate until the very last minute.
Like the last minute in some cases.
But not in this case. What happened was about 2 hours before the deadline, the UAW leadership basically on their Facebook page sent a notice to all of its rank and file saying we're going on strike, which does not bode well for how eager either the UAW or the manufacturers are at getting this thing settled, right? It seems like both sides are very much entrenched in their position. And just to clarify, I don't want to go into all the details because there are a lot of details, but basically the manufacturers, and this varies by manufacturer, so I'm going to be kind of broad, have offered about a 20% pay increase, whereas I think the UAW started at 40%. Yep. I think they're down to 35%, but the two sides are far apart. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because there's also a lot of other benefits that that are being discussed and negotiated, and that list of benefits is long in terms of like vacations and medical benefits and even getting retirement money.
Oh, in addition, there's a lot of things that
Pensions.
have to do with dealing with how much it costs, how much the dollar goes nowadays versus how far it went the last time they negotiated.
Cost of living increases.
Cost of living is a major thing as well. So these are the things that are just part of all three's push to go up against the automakers and negotiate with them. So we're not going to take sides or anything like that.
And actually, that's an important thing you said, because when we did our, they went on strike video, a lot of people said either one way or the other. Like somebody said, these guys build the cars that you review, so you should support the UAW. And then, of course, other people said, these rank and file are asking for too much money, so you need to be on the side of the manufacturers. Guys, I know this is an antiquated term for a lot of you out there, but we're journalists and we're impartial. We're here to present the news, not to make the news, which is also an antiquated and old.
Yeah, and we know that we're personalities and you guys watch us and you'll take away certain things that we think of. But have you noticed that we try not to go into politics? This is actually politics in many ways. So
of course, it's all politics.
Yeah, it is. So we're not going to jump into that part about what we prefer. We're simply going to bring you the news. But in addition, there's things that will affect you guys, the consumer, because of what's going on. And then you guys can just, talk amongst yourselves in terms of who's right and who's wrong. But I really do hope that they do come to an agreement soon because it does affect you guys.
For sure. I'll give you an example of kind of just so you understand where we're at. When I was in graduate school for journalism, I had a professor who refused to vote. You know why, Nathan? Because he wanted to report on the politics and not be part of the politics. And that's kind of where we're at, right? We report, but we're not actively taking part in it. And unfortunately, it's been a long time since I've gone to graduate school, and the world has certainly changed. And
they have computers now.
Yes, well, more than that. Everybody has kind of gone to each side of their, respective aisle or the respective tribe. And because I'm old school, we're going to be very impartial. We're not going to take a stance on this. But we are going to talk about, and this is the important part, how does this affect you? So let's talk about that.
Yes.
Let's jump right into that. So if you're thinking about getting a 2023 or 2024 model, the question you might be asking yourself is, what should I do?
And we have a simple answer, judging based on what we've seen with prices already.
Yeah. So we're at the end of the quarter right now in September, and there actually are discounts in place that the manufacturers have put in place to help move inventory, which will expire at the end of the quarter. And that's because, of course, the manufacturers want to move as much vehicles as possible, units in business speak, by the end of the quarter. And so it's always a good time to buy a car at the end of the quarter, which is now. And look, what's going to happen, and this is just supply and demand, is if the strike continues, we will have continued demand, but very little supply. So the answer in my mind is if you're looking to buy a 2024, but you're not sure about whether you should buy 2023, I'd say buy it now. Don't wait. Just don't wait.
Yeah, look at it this way. Every day that there's a strike, and right now what they're doing, they've been rotating strikes in terms of which place they're going to shut down on one particular day. And the reason we have the Wrangler and the Gladiator behind us, for those of you who are listening, the image behind us sort of indicates what's happening right now. Toledo plant is one of the plants that is being affected by the strike. As such, what we're saying is even one day closure, as you guys remember during the pandemic, one day closure can bottleneck things. If this goes on for weeks and weeks, it's going to be huge. So consider right now as a possible time to buy those vehicles that those discounts could very well evaporate, and then things could get really bad. So keep that in mind. If you're looking, maybe now's the time.
Actually, it's worse than that, Nathan.
Oh, yeah?
So as you probably know, the UAW has decided to strike at the heart of the manufacturers, which is their trucks, right? Because most American manufacturers are now making most of the money selling trucks. So of course,
trucks sell the most.
Of course, so they've gone after the Colorado, they've gone after the Gladiator, but that can change. Now here's something that Business Insiders will tell you that you may not be aware of. You may be thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm not into buying American. I want a Toyota, or I want a German car, right? Or whatever, Korean car. So this doesn't really affect me. Yes, it does, and I'll tell you why. There is a real potential that the suppliers to the big three will also go out of business. And a lot of them are already starting to worry about that, because the suppliers, in other words, the people that provide the ABS systems, that provide the transmissions, right?
Wiring harnesses, everything.
All that to the big three also provide those same parts and components to, Honda in Ohio.
Yeah.
Hyundai in, where's Hyundai? I'm blanking out right now.
Korea.
No. They have a plant also in America.
Alabama,
yeah. So, and if those suppliers go out of business because all of a sudden they are cash starved because they're not being able to supply the big three, then it's going to affect all the other manufacturers in America as well. So I would say to you, if you're thinking about buying a car, whether it's American or not, go get yourself one.
There's another part to that, which is, let's say you wanted to buy a vehicle, once again, that's American, that's being affected, and you can't. So then what are you going to do? You're going to shift over and find something else that is for sale, and you're going to buy that, meaning that the stock of those vehicles, the ones that are being built not by the big three, they're going to evaporate. As such, supply and demand. You guys are going to actually get screwed that way. So once again, we're putting it out there, and we're not holding a gun to your head, believe me, but we are saying do your research, check it out. If there are discounts now, most likely they may not be there later, and perhaps now is the right time to buy. And I wanted to kind of toss this to something else a little bit later, so we are going to revisit my point here, and that has to do with electric vehicles, because believe it or not, this all kind of ties in together.
Well, sure. I mean, one of the reasons that the UAW is striking is because of electrification.
Exactly.
But we'll get to that in a second. The other thing I think that's important to consider at this moment is that we're not here trying to promote like car sales. We really don't care whether you buy a vehicle or not. We're just looking out for your best interest, because the realistic opportunity here is that you're probably going to spend more this time 2 months from now or even a month from now than you would today. And unfortunately, that also has to do with used cars. So there was a study out this week by IC Cars, which basically said that for the same amount of money that you could buy a used car today, you're getting a used car that's 3 years older than if you had done it a few years ago because of the price increase in used cars.
So in other words, the equivalent of buying a 3-year-old car 10 years back is now a 6-year-old car today.
Yeah. And so whether you're in the new car market or in the used car market, there are repercussions, and they're not good.
Yeah. The more people are shy away from buying new cars based on these strikes and these other issues and high prices, they will be buying used cars. And one of the reasons why, even though used
can't
cars,
afford 'em.
well, not just that, used cars are extremely expensive now, as we just mentioned. And one of the reasons why people are still buying used cars is because it may be easier for them to get financed to get those used cars as opposed to buying a brand new car where financing can be more difficult. So this is one of those things that's a bit of a balance, and we understand how much of a pain it is. Ironically, used cars values have started to skyrocket since the pandemic, and they really haven't come down very much. We anticipated
it came down a little bit.
A little bit.
And now they're back up.
They just launched back up, exactly. Yeah. But they have not come down very much. We thought that the bubble would pop, but because of these things, because of the strike, because of the chip shortages and everything else that's happened, it just hasn't happened that way. So in some cases, you may be better served actually looking right now for a new car as opposed to some used car. So keep that in mind. We're putting it out there just for your edification, and we're not pushing any agenda other than that.
And the other thing that I think is worth keeping in mind is that, if you're waiting for the 2024 model, or you're waiting for 2024 because the model will be different, most of the cars that are on sale today are not getting refreshed. There's a couple of notable exceptions, and we just covered it, like the F-150 obviously just got a refresh.
Yeah, it did.
So if you're in the F-150 market and you really want the latest and greatest, you're going to want to probably get the 2024, but the Silverado, now we're talking trucks, but that's fine. The Ram 1500, they are staying the same, and the same is true for most of the cars, except with this exception: if you really want a Charger or Challenger, get it now while the getting's good.
Yeah, at the end, by December 31st, they will no longer be built. Period. They're just done. And in many cases, manufacturing has already stopped or is slowing down to stop. So once again, this may be the time to go and look for those. And in some cases, some of the cars, especially the ones that aren't the Halo ones, are filling up some dealership lots, and there are some incentives that you can find. You may have to go out of your city or even out of your state in some cases to find those deals, but they're there. Now, speaking of which, you were mentioning no changes. Vehicle behind me, the Jeep Wrangler and the Jeep Gladiator, they've only had mild changes this year in terms of some facial things done with the front end of the vehicle. I believe the bigger screen and seats that have been altered a bit, but and a little slightly different dash. But
so power seats.
Power seats.
They've moved the vents in both the Gladiator and the Wrangler down so they can put a bigger screen in, and they changed the grille. But I'll be danged if I can tell the difference.
Yeah, it's really not that much of a difference. So if you were to get the older one, I don't think anybody would be like, "Oh, wait a minute, that grille looks a little different. How dare you?" Nobody's going to care. So perhaps looking at a 2023 model that's going on clearance, that's something to keep in mind.
And speaking of strike repercussions, the UAW is also striking the plant where they make the Bronco and where they're going to make the upcoming new Ford Ranger, which is not good news because Broncos have been hard to get. As you know, selling over sticker, and the new Ranger, which is supposed to roll out any minute now, is probably going to be delayed because of it, because they're basically built on the same chassis.
Oh, it's a similar platform. They're on the same line, or the lines are next to each other, I believe. So, but it's the same plant, and by shutting that plant down, it's going to cause a major bottleneck for Ford. And Ford is, all of them are treading water because of this, because they know that their, consumers they want their vehicle. And I've heard stories of people waiting up to 18 months to get their Bronco, which is not acceptable in my book, but nonetheless, that's what a backup does. So imagine what will happen after the strike.
Now, the good news is, let's talk about electric vehicles. If you're willing to dip your toe, or you've been eager to dip your toe in the electric car market, and we get a lot of comments with people hating especially electric trucks, but there has come kind of a tipping point where electric vehicles are now starting to become more mainstream. I'm not talking about electrified vehicles. I'm talking about all electric
fully
vehicles.
Electric.
And so, for instance, the Mach-E, there have been, I'd say surpluses on dealer lots. So if you're looking,
In some cases, same with the Hyundai Ioniq 5.
yeah, so if you're, which is a very good car. So if you're looking to dip your toe in that water, this might be a very good time to do it. And Tesla is notorious, Nathan, notorious for, Mr. Musk gets up like at the end of the month and decides to slash prices. Last time he did it, it was on the Model.
40%.
It was on the Model S and Model X, $30,000 or $31,000. He slashed it like that. So if you're looking for a Tesla, it might be a good time to wait, a few more days until the end of the month. And I'm suspecting
He might slash him again.
He might slash him again. There is a new, supposedly, Model 3 coming out. It's been introduced in China and in Europe, but we just did a video basically saying that I would not buy it because they lose the stocks. So you lose your turn signals, you lose your...
There's a lot of things that just don't make sense to me.
You lose your, your drive stock, and you got to go into the OS to do it. Those are deal colors for me, but it is good looking. So hopefully that's coming to America for all of you Tesla fans. And of course, the Cybertruck is out there somewhere.
It's finally, they're starting to get delivered, I hear. And we've seen some videos of some people doing walk around.
No, there's no deliveries.
Oh, I thought they were putting them on
No.
trucks. I saw them on trucks. I literally saw them on trucks.
No deliveries yet. They're, the latest and greatest on this, I'm sorry to correct you, but I'm very up on this. The latest and greatest is what they've done is when you have a Tesla, you can get the reward points.
Yeah.
And they're going to do like a big first delivery event where they'll give it to the first person, and Musk will be there. And the way you get a ticket for that is you got to earn points, and it's all very incestuous if you're in the Tesla world.
You have to trade in your neighbor's ID and all that stuff.
But
I have seen a truck loaded with a bunch of Tesla trucks.
Yeah. I mean, they're like
so they're moving around.
Yeah, there was one. They were crash testing one. There was one that was spotted that was rolled. But yeah, there have been no deliveries, and there is no firm date even for that event yet. It's a lot of buzz in the Tesla world that it's coming, but I'm not going to hold my breath because Tesla.
Okay, so speaking of that, let's move on to something that I was going to come to earlier, and that has to do with Prime Minister Sunak from the Great Britain.
Oh, good news.
Okay, so what he's done is he's pushed back on a lot of the electrification mandates that have been out there throughout the EU and actually throughout the world, trying to get people to adapt to electric vehicles and to change a lot of the profiles of countries in terms of their carbon emissions. So he's pushed back a few years, actually.
So originally it was 2030, and now they're talking about 2035.
Right. So anyway, he's been pushing back further. But my point here isn't so much the fact that they've done that. I think this is sort of the tip of the iceberg. We've already been hearing rumors that Germany's already looking at doing that, and there's a lot of other countries that are doing it as well. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't want to hit their goals. They still want to hit these goals of reducing a certain amount of carbons and whatnot. But they want to push it back a little bit further, giving people longer to purchase their diesels, purchase their gas engines and whatnot. And I think that might trickle down to the United States at some point in time. That doesn't mean that the mandates are going away. That means that it's a possibility now that they may get pushed back a little bit in order to keep us in the rotation of the rest of the world. Because remember, it is a global economy, and in order to ship cars all over the place, having everybody on the same page would be beneficial.
Well, look, Nathan, 2030 for completely switching to electric is never going to happen. It just was an unrealistic goal to begin with. It was too aggressive, and I would say 2035 is also too aggressive. Right now, in America, 6%, it's gone up, of cars are all electric. That's still tiny. There's no way you're going to get in the next, 6 years in Europe to 100% all electric cars. No,
and especially because you have to consider the fact that there's a lot of people out there who, even with all the price reductions that they're doing and whatnot, and that you will not be able to afford these vehicles anytime soon. They are still very expensive. In addition, they're expensive to build.
That may change, though. That's the latest.
In addition, they're expensive to build right now. And in addition, they are not exactly something that works for people in certain types of financial situations. For instance, people who live in apartment housing that simply cannot charge their vehicle because they can't run an extension cord from the 5th floor of an old apartment. These are things that have to be overcome. That's partially infrastructure and everything else. And that is coming, but I don't think it's going to happen that soon. This is a personal opinion. Now, in addition, in terms of requiring people to drive these vehicles, I think what we're going to start seeing is incentivizing people to drive these vehicles as opposed to having a gun to everybody's head saying this has to happen. And perhaps This is where Toyota may be leading the way, showing that electrification of vehicles as opposed to going full electric may be the best way to transition, because they are pretty much almost every vehicle that Toyota builds now or will be building in the next year are hybrids, with only 2 exceptions.
Yeah, so Toyota had an ambitious goal of selling, oh God, what was it, like 60, was it 60,000? I'm really bad with numbers. And today the story was that they're nowhere near that goal in terms of what percentage. In fact,
60,000 what?
electric vehicles by this point, and they haven't sold anywhere near there. In fact, only 1% of Toyota's complete production has become electric, and their goal was much higher than that. So Toyota is certainly, in terms of pure electric, not electrified, right? Toyota sells a lot of hybrids.
Well, they even acknowledged that, and they said that they're resetting, and they're going to do an all different platform and a whole different thing. So,
I mean, if Toyota wants to get serious about electric vehicles, they need to do like an electric FJ like they showed, right? They have to start building cars that people want.
Well, they have to start from the platform up. So that means a whole different battery source. That means a whole different type of motor and everything else, which is what they're working on right now. And we may be seeing some movement in that direction. But Toyota straight out has been saying that they've been pushing back on this whole thing of the mandate, and they're saying, listen, we can make a very clean hybrid. And those clean hybrids, we have proven, are very affordable, which in many cases they are, and sustainable. So the question really is whether or not Toyota's right and everybody's wrong. And that is a big question, but that's a whole different conversation. The point is that now Toyota is looking at doing possibly solid state batteries we're hearing rumors of, or the new sodium lithium batteries, which is another possibility that they might be working with. And those will create an all-new platform if indeed one of those is adopted by Toyota. As such, it may give them an opportunity to get a leg up finally up on the competition, because the BZ4X, frankly, is just mediocre.
Oh God, that's being kind.
Yeah, I think it's completely adequate for being a compliance car.
Okay, I'll give you that. Hey, so before it's all doom and gloom here, if you guys and don't worry, we're going to get into V8s very soon. So
yes.
If you hate electric cars, don't tap out. We're going to get into that, because I've got a really fun topic that we'll talk about next, because we have an IS500 sitting in the
What a
park.
great car!
What a great car! Oh my God! I was at McDonald's at drive-thru today, and the guy looked at it and he goes, "What a beautiful car!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "You know what's under the hood?" He goes, "No." And when I said it was a V8, he said, "No." And I said, "Yeah, it's got a 5-liter V8," which, by the way, we just drag raced against the Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
And that video will be up on all TFL. Anyway, let me continue. Where was I going with this? So there are electric vehicles out there that are a bargain, Nathan.
Yeah, used ones.
Used ones that have been ignored and are really good. I'll give you an example. The Audi e-tron. The Audi e-tron, those things originally were anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000. You can pick the used one up, a nice one, for half that today, maybe even less, if you want. And it's got plenty of range, 250 miles of range. It's a big old SUV. I'm talking about the SUV version, not the sports car.
Yeah, I know.
The first one. I drove it on a road trip from San Francisco to Tahoe, which did really well. It's got very good charging rate, and it's one of those cars that Audi built probably just a little too early, and it didn't really resonate with people. And so now in the used car market, it's a bargain. So if you are looking for electric cars and you don't have money for a brand new whatever, that's a good one to consider.
Actually, it's a really good point, because I stand as personal testimony that buying used electric vehicles is a very cheap endeavor if you do it right. And the best part is there's almost no maintenance costs, or very little maintenance costs, with owning electric vehicles. I owned a Nissan Leaf for about 3 years. My daughter did, and she beat the crap out of the car. She hit every curb in Denver, and it still just kept on running. It was a strong little car. Yeah, the range wasn't great, but at the same time, for first cars or even second cars, they're a great way of avoiding an awful lot of crap that comes up later on. That 60,000 mile thing where you have to pay $1,500 to replace the plugs. You don't have to worry about that. So that is a good potential thing to think about for those of you who want to check out electric vehicles. Another one that's interesting, a friend of mine just recently bought the old Fiat 500e. And he buys it just to zoom back and forth to work, and it's only like 6 or 7 miles for him, so it doesn't matter that it's degraded a little bit. And he loves driving it. He says it's a real hoot.
Yeah, so there's that feeling out there. You'll take my V8 out of my cold dead hands. And here's my thinking on that, right? People buy Toyotas after their other car has left them stranded not once but twice, and then they're like, "Okay,
I'm done.
I need to get to work.
Yeah.
This is no longer working for me."
Right.
And then they go to Toyota, and that has always been Toyota's strength. And we're doing this series where we're buying trying to prove that cheap Toyotas are the most reliable. So we bought 3 different vehicles. And we're not going to tell you what they are.
Yeah, I was wondering how far you're going to go with this because I thought we we're keeping some of the secret.
No, but we went, as you know, on Monday and shot episode 3 of that where we took them off road.
Yep.
But on Friday, one of the vehicles took a big dump. Basically, it started running on 5 cylinders. So it's a 6-cylinder. It started running on 5.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh, God, we need this for a video shoot. And we're trying to prove that cars are reliable. And we videotaped it. It's part of the series. But so Tommy went out and spent the morning basically running back and forth to the parts store. First, he started buying a coil pack for that. It was cylinder number 6. That didn't solve it. Mm-hmm. Then he went out and bought a spark plug. And then he bought 5 more spark plugs. And he bought spark plug wires. And after all that, basically did a full tune. It still didn't sort it.
Yep.
Now, keep in mind, this vehicle does have over 200,000 miles on it. But you will never have that issue with, an electric car. You'll never have to change spark plugs. You'll never have coil packs. You'll never have to have, now we took it to a mechanic, and he's like, it could be a head gasket. You'll never have that issue. And I think those basic facts about the vehicle will overcome all of the bravado of, I will never buy an electric vehicle because I love my V8. I love V8s too, but gosh, we've got a bunch of old ones. I spend a lot of time fixing them, and it's not fun.
It's not cheap either.
It's not cheap. No. We just another example. We bought that. By the way, it's for sale. If you're interested, we're selling our C6 Corvette.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, let us know. Ask a TFL truck or info at TFL car. And when we took a drag racing, we blew the transmission. You know how much that cost? $3,300 to repair the transmission. How many gears does an electric car have, Nathan?
Usually 0.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's sometimes there's one.
Porsche does too.
Yeah. So there's a 2 sometimes. But the thing about electric cars, you don't have to worry about any of the fluids other than washer fluid, really. And occasionally, I've heard stories that sometimes the brake fluid might have to be flushed because the brake system actually works very similar to what an internal combustion car would be. But in my experience, putting on 30,000 miles on a car that was relatively cheap, other than having to replace the tires because, once again, my daughter, it was a very, very inexpensive car to run. So for those of you who are on a budget and you don't have to do major long distance or you need a second car that just is for commuting, these are really good options. And that's where the positives are. The negatives are, they don't have a lot of soul. They don't have a lot of fun. They don't sound really good. And
they're no good cross country.
Yeah, and they're really not very much fun at cross country. And we have a lot of experience with that now. We've done an awful lot of cross country runs with electric cars. But with that all being said, I have a different perspective on things.
What is it?
The more people that buy electric vehicles that don't need the gas ones means, I think, that perhaps they can stretch out the length of those internal combustion cars for other people who do like them.
You.
Well, not just me. I mean, I would buy an electric.
Hellcat.
If I could get my Hellcat, I'd get my. Yeah, actually, my wife and I have been talking about not that.
Hellcat?
Not a Hellcat. No.
Oh God, I'm like, did you get remarried?
I know, seriously. Wife number 2, calling on you.
That's in your prenup, right? I get a Hellcat.
Not that long ago, I put her inside of a Durango SRT.
And
she hated it. She hated it to high heaven because she was watching the gas gauge moving down as I was accelerating. But it sounded, of course, when I came to a tunnel, what do you do when you go into a tunnel when you have a massive V8?
You let off the gas? No, of course not.
So I'm unrolling the windows and I could see her. I could see her, but not hear her going, no, because I was going, bleh! It's the most amazing feeling in the world. But that vehicle gets terrible mileage. So to compensate, if I ever got one of those, I would get my wife an electric vehicle because she actually goes back and forth all throughout Denver. That's part of her job is driving around a bit. So it would work out great. We would save the environment and at the same time I would destroy it. It's perfect.
And let me just, I'm really tired of this. I'm just going to be ranty here. And I'm just tired of it. And if you're out there, first of all, saying, well, your spark plugs are cheap to fix, but replacing a battery is then, that's also not true. Teslas has been around a long time now, a very long time. Remember we saw one at Detroit Auto Show back in 2009. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
That's when the Model S came out.
That was when the S was just coming out.
And there's a lot of information now out there, fact-based, not emotionally based on battery degradation, and basically the number is pretty straightforward. It's 1% per year, so a 10-year-old Tesla will have lost 10% of its battery range. Holy cow! I think a 10-year-old internal combustion car is going to lose 10% of its ponies,
give or take. But
you see what I'm saying? And then please don't put in the comments there are 4-year-olds mining lithium, and just because you listen to one form of media and you can't open your mind and actually look at other forms of media. Please stop with that, okay? That's all a bunch of hooey.
I said hooey.
Yeah, I said hooey. Yeah, and maybe like read different sources and not just one source for your information. All this stuff is of course based in a little bit of a fact, but it's twisted to make it seem like it's much worse. And we're not going. I just saw another comment. Our power grid can't take it. Gosh, Nathan, how does our power grid take having like a 10% population growth every year or whatever the hell it is? How do we manage to support adding whatever it is 100,000 new homes, and yet we can't figure out a way to add capacity to our power grid, to power electric cars? I'm sick of that argument too.
Yeah, well, I have solar, so I'm not part of your argument. If it goes down, I'm up.
Or how about this one, Nathan? We're going to dig a hole so deep mining lithium, right?
Oh, God.
Jesus, it's not. There's a lot of lithium. It's getting cheaper. Battery chemistries are changing. It doesn't have to be lithium. It can be sodium.
Well, it's not just the lithium. It's the cobalt, actually, that people are concerned about because children are mining them and everything else with blood diamonds. But here's the good news.
Yes, exactly.
They've been for over 100 years also sending children to dig oil derrick wells and all the other platforms used for sucking up crude. So it's been happening for years. We exploit children all the time. Come on, you guys know that.
And oil is so clean, and there's never been an oil spill anywhere, ever.
Never. No, he's being sarcastic across the board, guys.
Because I'm sick of all the misinformation
and
lies.
And it is all out there. So if you find one source that just happens to cater to what you're thinking, perhaps you should look for about 4 other sources too. Anyway, so let's move on from there because it's easy to get into this route.
I want to talk about baseball and actually football and Formula One.
Okay, football and Formula One. You hit it.
Okay, all right. So
those are my 2 favorite things.
All right. So did you happen to watch the CU-CSU game?
I have no choice to watch some of it because my daughter goes to CU.
Good. Did you happen to watch a Singapore Grand Prix?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I had a thought. Not a rant, a thought.
Okay.
So when you and I started watching probably Formula One back in the day, right? It was all about kind of courage and about recklessness to some extent, right? Because let's face it, people watched and still do watch auto racing for the crashes. And especially back in the day,
there are people who are into that type of destructive.
People died, right?
Yeah, a lot of them did back in the day.
Very famous people, very famous racers, right?
Yeah.
And so the sport was dangerous, and it was about a lot of things, but not necessarily about driving ability, right? There was, of course, a lot of driving ability, but you could be reckless, you could be fearless, you could be courageous, whatever you want, and try to pass. It's cool, like illegally on the left, illegally on the right, and that was all applauded. Well, I was watching the Singapore Grand Prix, and I couldn't help but notice just how much Formula has cracked down on that. You even think about like doing an illegal pass, and you get a 5-second penalty. 5 seconds, and in Formula One terms, that could be the difference between like 3rd and 18th. It can be.
Yeah. I agree that, and a lot of other people agree with you too, that Formula One's rules have gotten almost out of control. And I'm hoping that they'll find some parity. Oh, go ahead.
Let me finish. So the stewards have become much more draconian. But I think what that does is then, at least from my point of view, and it could, you could watch this race in a completely different way, but from my point of view, what that does is it shifts the focus away from like courage or recklessness or boldness to driver ability, because you take all that away, right? You can't do a lot of the other stuff that you used to do. And let's face it, just because you're, let's say reckless doesn't necessarily make you a good driver. It just means that you have a little bit more disregard for your own life. And now you can't do that. And now the focus has become entirely on the driver's ability. To a large extent. And let me finish. Let me, and you can disagree.
Okay.
I wish you did disagree. Because
I certainly will. Okay.
Because back then it wasn't just, I'm not just talking about the driver, it was also about cheating, let's face it. Right? They've cracked down on cheating. To some extent, there's still some cheating, but there were all these other extraneous factors that took away from the actual driving ability, because everybody was trying to get an advantage somehow, and whether that was like, having, a different aero profile than you should have, right? Or having, I don't know, gaming the rules. That's all been part of it. But when you kind of peel that stuff away, it just becomes about the pure driving ability of each of the drivers. Now, you can argue that, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it. So then I'm watching the CSU game, and my God, Nathan, did they have a lot of penalties? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
personal fouls.
Yeah, CU would have lost had it not been for all the penalties from CSU.
And I'm thinking to myself, I think football, and people are going to hate this too, needs to kind of go down that Formula One route because
They already have.
But even more, you do a late hit, let's see, first down, 15 yards, that's nothing. That's not going to change the game. A personal foul should be like the opposing team gets the ball on the 20-yard line of the aggressing team. That's the kind of game changer that will prevent that. And what I'm thinking is if you actually crack down, and I know football is based on, I grew up in Chicago, Bear football, right? It's based on hurting other people. It's based on hard hits. It's based on, but what that does is it takes away from the athleticism. So I think, and I know all of you out there are like, Roman, you are so wrong.
Yeah, I agree with them. Go on, keep going.
No, but if you take away all of, or if you don't allow, or you make the penalty so hard, and I'm not talking about like if 2 guys or 3 guys go up for a catch and they fall on each other and they hurt themselves, that's part of the game. That is football, right? But late hits or face masks or all the stuff that went on in the CSU game.
So
right?
increase the penalties is what you're...
Yeah, and then that will make the focus not on aggression, not on, hey, how much can I lift, but on how athletic you are, on actually the beauty of the sport versus just the brutality of the sport. And I think it's going to happen, Nathan, because I'm telling you right now, I know people who will not let their kids play football because head injuries have become such a terrifying... You've seen some of those football players out there who either, wasted their entire lives trying to get to the big show, and then in the first game, they got taken out and their career has been ended shortly because of, some debilitating accident that wasn't any of their doing, but because of somebody got too aggressive. And like I say, young families don't want their kids playing football because it potentially compromises their brains. There's just so much. And I feel for those people, but I think if you kind of tone down the brutality, you would tone up the athleticism and actually make it a more interesting game to watch, and not have like what happened. Who was the quarterback? Third play.
Oh, come on.
No, what do you mean?
Man, Aaron Rodgers, are you kidding me?
But still,
God.
come on.
I've been trying not to get into your rant, but my God.
Aaron Rodgers, 2 plays, he's out for the season.
Because he sucks. Because his Achilles
that's
tendon
what I mean.
is the worst.
That's what I mean. This is right, but sure, that's a great way of looking at it. He sucks.
He has the worst Achilles tendon ever. We all know that. Why? Because he got paid $40 million to...
He's not the only one, Nathan. Every Sunday, there are dozens of players that get taken out, and everybody's just like, well, that's football. I'm like, does it? Does it have to be?
Yes.
Really? Isn't that making the game worse, not better?
Okay, can I go?
Yes, go. Your turn. I'll shut up now.
Everything you've said is malarkey and bullshit. Okay, so here I go. First of all, can anybody tell me a better racer than Senna? No. And he was from a time when there were some interesting cheats that were going on, indeed. But at the same time, his driver ability, and I challenge you guys to find a better, there's like Hunt and some of these other guys who had raw ability, driving cars that were manually shifted, okay? These guys had serious talent. Yes, some of the people in there were trying, let's add a little extra nitrogen here or there, or let's take off a little bit of armor. Let's do this, let's do that, let's tune it differently to try to get a leg up. But the reality is being able to drive the Green Monster in a vehicle that's manually shifted, that had absolutely no ABS, that was on fire 90% of the time, and being able to do that and pass people was guts, capability. You can't go back to Sterling Moss and go, dude, you just had guts, you had no talent. That's BS.
No,
no.
I didn't say that. I think
you did. You were saying basically people have more balls back then to do crazy things as opposed to today because they get penalized really hard.
Let's take your Senna example, right? Senna, I agree, was a magnificent driver, and he died way too young.
Yes.
Horrible accident, right?
Yep.
And that was probably not because of anything I said. They were pushing technology, I believe, carbon fiber.
There's also track issues and there were problems, yes.
But today, because of the amount of safety they have implemented, at the Singapore race, what's his name, crashed at the very last lap. And he crashed into the wall and he walked away from it. And once again, that allowed him to race this next weekend. Whereas
that's tech.
In Senna's, so it's part of it. Once again, make the focus on the driver and the driving, and make everything else kind of go away. That's where I'm going. I'm not saying those guys weren't good drivers. They were incredible. Mansell, all those guys, you mentioned had huge balls, were incredible drivers. But what I'm saying is, make it safe so that we can enjoy the driving. and take away the part where people die.
Okay, so with that being said, you also mentioned like in certain types of turns being, getting penalized and everything else. A racetrack like Singapore, you cannot emphasize enough how important safety is because it is a remarkably tight track, and there's 90 degree turns. It's really, really difficult and whatnot. And I agree with that to a certain degree. However, at the same time, because there are so many rules that are really, really minor in some cases, there's an awful lot of fans who are actually turning away from Formula One
I think it's the most popular.
It is the most popular sport, but it's actually gone down in viewership. You can look up the statistics yourself. I look at them every year. And Formula One.
I disagree with that.
No, but go ahead and look it up. Formula One has actually lost a little bit of its popularity. You can go all the way back to the days when Marlboro used to sponsor and when they were taken away and how they dropped down and then came back up and then it dropped down.
Series made it a
Series doesn't do dookie. What happens is you get a little tiny spike and then it drops back down. Fortunately, what happens is they pull back the stewards from time to time because they overrule too much, and it takes away from the racing enjoyment because the person who deserves to win sometimes doesn't win. And so I completely and utterly disagree that adding rules is going to help. Now, adding safety, on the other hand, and making cars safer, that's tech, and I agree with that 100%.
Would you agree that Singapore race is one of the best races of the year?
No.
You don't think that was a nail biter?
It was a good race, but it wasn't.
Most part, with Verstappen winning every race, it's just been a parade.
Yeah, but that's there's nothing wrong with somebody who has talent who's able to winning. At the same time, I do prefer it when the teams are a little bit more equal, and that's never going to be. You're never going to have all the teams being exactly equal.
I never said to make them equal. I just said put the focus on the driver, not on the cheating, not on the technology to such an extent, and make it hard to be.
The technology is part of the thing for preventing them from cheating and preventing cars from blowing up.
I love the technology. I'm just saying.
You just contradicted yourself.
No, not the technology that allows you to cheat. Get rid of that.
Okay, so let's move on to football.
Okay.
Let's move on to football now.
Well, this is one you're really going to disagree with.
Well, yeah, completely and utterly. Now, first of all, helmets, the safety of helmets has increased vastly over the years.
They were leather in the beginning.
It doesn't take a lot. Back in your day, they were, but I played football all the way up to college, and I can tell you that absolutely the equipment has improved, but some of the rules are a little much, and I don't think making them. If you strangle something too much, what's going to happen is a lot of plays that almost everybody who is watching or is on the field looking at looks like it's a legal thing suddenly becomes an illegal thing based on somebody else's perspective. And it can really draw out a game. How many times during a penalty do you sit there and wait until they figure out, oh, right, this is the penalty that's right or wrong or whatever. Oh, it's challenged? No, it's not challenged. These things, I think, interfere with the game, just like they would in Formula One. Too many penalties slows down the game. Too many penalties waters down the game. Too many penalties takes people away from watching the game. I do not want to watch a game that's full of penalties and is boring as hell. I want action. And I'm sorry that that's a gladiatorial way of looking at it, but that is exactly it. I want action. I want people throwing. I want people hitting. I want action. So that's
you
works
can't
with
have people
both.
throwing or hitting when they're carted off the field in a stretcher, Nathan.
That happens.
That's not that person can't throw or hit. He's done for the year.
Which is why there are about 3 times the amount of people waiting on the benches ready to take their place.
But those people oftentimes aren't as good.
And sometimes they're better.
No, then they'd be starting if they were better. Right?
No, not necessarily, actually. Some guys actually will, once the cameras are on them, they'll play better.
You're saying you want more carnage. In racing,
I didn't say more carnage.
Yes, you said
I said I want more action.
Gladiatorial, which is action equals carnage. You want a more free-for-all sport, and my argument is basically the exact opposite. I think it'd actually be more entertaining because it would take. Look, you can have a sport where it's all about pumping as much iron as possible,
it has nothing to do with just
and doing as
iron.
many late hits as possible, grabbing as many face masks as possible, and that's going to be action.
And those are all penalties. They all take place.
The penalties are meaningless.
See,
you end somebody's career, like the guy here at CU who's out for now 3 weeks, right, because of a kidney injury, and you're like, oh, that's football.
Yes,
I'm sure if you're part of his family, you're like,
who cares? I'm sorry. Who cares? I don't know his family. And I'm not going to sit there and throw my emotions towards somebody I don't know. Even if it's my favorite player and they get hit hard, that sucks. I'm sorry, but that was their choice to play because they want to play. And they know the risks when they went in, just like racing.
Yeah, I'm sure Michael Schumacher's family,
He was skiing when he hit his head.
I know he was
That
skiing,
has nothing to do with Formula One.
The point is, when you get injured and you're in the hospital, and all of a sudden, your career's over. And I know he didn't get hurt. I know he got hurt skiing.
Yes,
has
nothing to do with racing.
I know how he got hurt. But the fact is, you take somebody out, you injure him, it makes the game worse, not better. I'm sorry. When a race car driver dies, it makes the sport worse, not better. When a football player gets injured and taken out for either his career or a season or a few games, it makes
you're
the
painting
sport
with such a broad brush.
Better.
You're painting with a Roman brush, which is just your one perspective, and there's all this other stuff over here, which I don't think you're looking at.
I don't know.
There's so much more. Why are these sports so popular? Because people enjoy watching them. Why do they enjoy watching them? Because they're competitive, and they're competitive at a level they identify with. When you add too many rules, you're going to strangle the sport. You're going to slow the sport down. I'm sorry, but you may feel for the family. Hey, that's great. That means you have a big heart. I don't. And honestly, if somebody dies doing what they love doing,
I think
is that so wrong?
No, yes, it is wrong. But it's horribly wrong. But anyway, it's one of those arguments where I think this is exactly why soccer is going to overtake football at some point. It's already done in the world.
Well, yes, in the world, because they don't have pigskin. No.
Of course.
In the United States,
and with what's that? What's the series on? Is it Apple TV? Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
that's just going to supercharge soccer. And let's say you're.
Didn't they cancel that series?
No, it ended. It didn't get canceled, didn't it? It was the most popular series ever. Anyway, so let's say you're a young family and you have a kid and you've got the opportunity. Shall we play soccer or shall we play football? I bet you 9 out of 10 of those families would be like, I love football, but my kid's playing soccer.
That's fine.
And you do that long enough, football's going to end up losing because the understanding of the next generation. Of course, Texas, Nathan.
Yeah, go to Oklahoma and say that.
Of course.
Go to New York State and say that, or even California for that matter. Do you know how many people line up and absolutely are dying to get onto their high school football team? There are lines that go around the block.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
No, I don't
Look how many people play college football.
I believe that in Texas. I don't believe that in
Dude, I grew up in California. I absolutely...
Well, hold on. 30 years ago, sure.
Yeah, but I'm telling you that even right now, look how popular USC, UCLA are. Look how popular they are in terms of football. How many people are dying to play on those teams? Because of all the high schools that feed into them, and then, of course, all the people coming from other high schools around the country. I'm sorry, but football will still be one of the most popular American sports long after you and I are dead. And yes, soccer's, I got nothing wrong. Soccer, or football as you call it, everywhere else but the United States, is a great sport. I enjoy watching it, but I'm sorry. I love watching, especially I love pro football. I love watching it. I love the Steelers. I love watching the games. But no, it's not going to change, and they're not going to... God, I hope they don't make it more boring and slower with adding additional rules.
I didn't say boring. I just said make the rules such that if you do a late hit, I'm not talking about.
They already get penalized for late hits.
Come on, 15 yards and first down. That's not a penalty. That's a joke.
Are you kidding? That can change a game.
Oh, you know what? 2 yards can change a game with that kind of thinking too. I mean, a serious penalty where you think long and hard before you decide to face mask somebody. You think long and hard because when you go back to the locker room, the guys are going to be like, "Damn, dude, you just cost us 7 points," as opposed to, we were able to dig ourselves out of that 15-yard deficit. Big deal. Yeah. Anyway, all right, I think we've done enough. I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments.
Yes. Because I'm right and he's wrong.
Let the hate come at me. I know football. I understand it. My point is make it safer and make it more athletic.
Wait, you said you come from Chicago, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Bear football. I came from that.
Wait, they have a team? Yes. That's what I said. Yes.
All right.
Direct your hate towards me if you live in Chicago.
All right.
Sorry.
Now let's switch topics again for the last part of this, and let's talk about this, Nathan. I think we are living through, and please don't any more hate, but I think we are living through kind of the twilight of the V8. Unfortunately, they're going away in a lot of, but there are still some V8s. So I'm going to give you a task.
Okay.
And it's based on the fact that we just have this incredible car. We have the Lexus IS500, which is a 5-liter.
What a great car.
V8, rear-wheel drive, almost 500 horsepower, in a tiny little car about the size of what used to be a 3 Series once upon a time before it got big. Love that car. Just love the car. Love that stacked exhaust. So let me ask you this. If you had $60,000 to spend on a car that you could hold for the rest of your life.
Dodge Durango SRT.
That's it.
That would be it.
Let's go back and forth. Let's just do a list.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No.
I thought you were asking.
No,
okay.
but I think there are more than that.
There are a couple other cars out there, sure.
So I love that choice. My only worry about that is you're looking. Maybe you misunderstood. That's a car you could drive for your family. I'm talking about a car you hold on to and becomes a classic, and that probably will become a classic.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Yeah.
But I'm talking about, like, for me, it would probably be. Remember we drove that Audi R8, the 2009, with that incredible manual transmission.
Wonderful car.
With either the 8-cylinder or the 10-cylinder.
It was an 8-cylinder.
The 8-cylinders are now like $60,000.
Yeah.
So that is a car that I would definitely like. I think it's becoming affordable, and I think it's a car that I would.
And I love the first gen R8. I think it's a beautiful car, personally.
Yeah.
So all right. So are you asking me which one out of all these cars for $60,000?
We can just go down the list. There's a whole bunch. So $60,000. It's a lot of money.
So let's start with
and it could
Audi.
be classic, or it could be new.
Acura does not build a V8 that's used in markets. So then it would be Audi, and Audi does.
Doesn't have to be a V8. It could be any car.
Okay.
I'll give you another one of mine
Okay.
to think. I would buy, and I love this car. It's my guilty. I would buy the BMW i8. I just love the look of that car.
Yeah.
And
those
those
are
are now
3-cylinder.
Yeah, it's a little
turbo.
3-cylinder out of the Mini, and it's got the battery, which would terrify me because those batteries are, they
Do you
didn't build
remember
them.
getting in and out of that car?
Oh, it's horrible.
It's the worst.
It's horrible. But I saw that, Nathan. I was in Frankfurt, and they had that car sitting at the airport. Just, you know what I mean? Just there,
there,
in the
yeah,
terminal. And I like almost fell over it when I came to a dead stop because like it just looked. And it
is one
such
of the
a
best looking
beautiful car.
BMWs
Yeah. Oh my
in
God.
modern memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the M1 in my book. The
Yeah.
M1 is still is remarkably sexy, and that unfortunately is never really came here. So in terms of V8s that I would get for say $60,000, perhaps later on down the line. There's a bunch of Mustangs, Chargers.
I got GT 350 with the flat plane crank. You can't.
Yeah.
I'd love to get a GT 500. Those are not 60,000, but you can now.
The Boss 302, even though it's not as beefy, I really like.
You can get one of those for 60.
Or the Bullet. Remember that? I loved that.
Those are less than 60.
Yes, I loved that Bullet that we had. It was, to me, see, when I had a vehicle that's too over amped and it's a little too much, it's not as fun for me because I'm too worried about just losing the rear end and everything else. But that Bullet was just right for me personally. So that, in terms of Mustangs, that was one of my favorites, and I could easily get one of those for far less than 60.
How about a Camaro?
Yeah, it would have to be a convertible because I can't stand
Yeah,
just
but
sitting.
for 60, you could get. Remember that one you fell in love with? The
ZL1.
ZL1. You could get a ZL1
Oh yeah, that's
manual.
yes, manual, and just absolutely tear up the neighborhood. That it's a fun car, but I would probably have to get that's the only one I'd want as a convertible because I don't like the way I sit inside the way the roof is designed. Speaking of that, almost everything that Dodge has built with the Challenger, I love Challengers. I love the way they look.
Which one? Would you get the 392?
I would probably think about a 392 wide body. They have a couple of the different packages. Manual transmission, of course, which would be a lot of fun. The
Hellcat's too much.
Yeah, the Hellcat is just a little bit much for me, just because I know I would fracture and explode the transmissions every time.
People think it's faster. It's not. Remember we took them on the track. It's not faster because you can't put the power down.
Yeah,
it's just too much power.
It's really if you're a track guy, and I like going through canyons. If you're someone who likes going straight, then absolutely that's where the Hellcat comes into its own. But if you like going through and carving canyons and everything else, then you want to get even the RT is a really good car.
Let's take a step back first of all.
Okay.
Charger or Challenger? You can only pick one.
Oh, Challenger.
Okay, Challenger.
Yeah.
So you want the two-door. Mm-hmm. All right. And then there's a 392 wide body.
Yeah.
All right.
With a manual transmission. They have a green one with these.
Okay, that's my next question.
With the bronze rims. I actually saw this thing. I forgot where. I think it was one of the auto shows. Like Chicago.
The one that I wanted was the Daytona. Remember the Daytona, the light blue with the white racing stripes.
That was a really good looking car.
That's not 60. That's way over 60.
Yeah,
but that was one that I would.
That's a little pricey.
Would have loved to have.
So then leaving Dodge.
Yeah.
Moving on to I guess what would be next?
Try BMW.
BMW.
Any BMWs?
Yeah. There's a couple out there that are interesting, but older ones, like much older ones.
So you're like 2002
or even older.
Even older than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything beyond that. I don't know.
Think of something with pop-up headlights.
BMW. Oh, ZL. No, Z1.
No.
M1.
Nope. Well, after the M1. Yeah, they had a V12, they had a V8. You could get a manual V12.
I'm lost. Tell me.
I'm talking about the old 8 Series.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I loved that car.
God, that was
I
so technologically
absolutely-
advanced.
Yeah, and you know it went right up against the Porsche 928 to a
Yep.
certain degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of the same.
Same philosophy.
Yeah, and
Grand
what
Tourer.
I just. Oh,
That 12-cylinder is magnificent. 850. So that was the 850, and what was the 8-cylinder? Like
was
an
that an
830 or
845 or 850.
something like that. Yeah, but
I
I know that. I think maybe.
I always thought of the V12, but the V8 is supposed to be spectacular. In
Yeah.
fact, it's supposed to handle better because it's lighter.
Maybe it was at the 860. I forget. Anyway, they
But
were.
yeah,
something.
that's definitely one of them. And then, I mean, even if you look at the V10 M5, remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was a
But
monster.
that had Vanos issues.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
if you're saying spend the money, I don't care about what the issues were. That was a hell of a car.
All right. How about this one?
Hmm.
CTSV wagon.
Yes. Oh man, one of our early videos, like early somewhat popular videos, was when Roman and I got our hands on a CTSV wagon. It was black with a manual transmission, and we had a hell of a lot of fun with it. Great story is that when Roman got pulled over, and what did the cop tell you?
I forget now.
He told you to drive it like you stole
Oh
it.
yeah, that's right. He goes, yeah.
I
That's
thought
right.
that's about the funniest damn thing. He just wanted to look at the car. That's
Yeah.
the only reason he pulled it over.
There's
And
one in Boulder. I see one driving around, and I lust after it. I lust after it so much,
What
Nathan.
a fantastic car. I think that was like the absolute peak of Cadillac building a car that really was for just a few people as opposed to some of these other cars that
Yeah,
are
like the 500 journalists who bought them, who could afford it.
who bought the brown one.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have owned one of those. And I tried to convince my wife at one point in time when, things were different financially. We only had one kid. I was just like, hey, one of these would make sense because we could put a stroller in it. And she just looked at me and saying, is it all-wheel drive? I'm like, damn you, woman.
Okay, all right, let's talk about something a little bit cheaper. How about like a Mazda Speed 3?
Yeah, sure. Speed 3 is great, but I mean, that's a 4-cylinder turbo. I mean, you were talking
yeah.
about V8s.
Yeah.
Mazda builds a lot of great cars. I've owned 5 Mazdas or car bases based on Mazda platforms. So I enjoy Mazda, but they've never built anything other than a V6 or a 4 that have been worthwhile.
But maybe that's why they don't have that kind of reputation for sports cars, because even the Miata is still, kind of a British homage or a Japanese homage to British roadsters.
The RX-7 and the RX-8, I mean, they definitely had cut their teeth on racing.
Yeah.
And Mazda has some great offerings, but there's nothing there that would really tempt me over, say, some certain V8s that you mentioned. And I would say that there's a couple other cars that had like really rare V8 options to them. I mean, even Volvo had a V8 option on their big SUV at one point. It was like a Yamaha.
It was a
drive
Yamaha,
one.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was everybody.
Yeah,
but the problem
and
with that was it was just a boring SUV.
Yeah,
It had a cool
exactly,
engine,
and it wasn't really all that fast
Yeah,
either.
no.
Yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there like that. You know what else would be a lot of fun? There was the Chevy. I just remembered the Caprice SS.
Oh yeah, or the Pontiac GTO.
Yes, or the GTO GTP.
Yeah.
That was the one with the real hot one.
Yeah.
And we got to drive those.
Yeah,
and
those
those
are
things were a
cool.
lot of fun. I mean, they're Australian, but I mean, they were okay.
Holdens, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
rebranded
Those were
Holden.
great. I would definitely get my hands on one of those.
And of course, we're now sitting on a C5 and a C6. Talk about.
Oh, yeah.
You can't
they
ignore
build
the small block Chevy. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of Corvettes out there that are tempting. I actually really like the one that Case had. I like that better than all the other ones you guys bought.
C501? Is it a C? Yeah.
Yeah.
C501. That's the one.
That's got like the Lotus design
Yeah.
heads
Yeah.
or
Those
something
are
like that, and
in
the suspension.
A good one you can get for like 30,000. That'd be another one.
Yeah, but it's really hard to get those that haven't been completely knackered because they're used and they
people
get
race them,
hammered,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's plenty of old Corvettes out there that are worthwhile, and some that aren't, frankly. So really depends on your perspective. But pretty much all Corvettes are V8s. So
I would say any Coyote 5-liter. I took that. And that's videos, like I say, on all TFL this weekend. I took that Mustang that we have, the 2014, with the automatic and raced against a Lexus, and 420 horsepower, right? Mm-hmm. Versus almost 500, and yet it's,
with two different weights of cars, it's actually a very good race.
Yes, yeah, because the Lexus is heavier. It also has an 8-speed versus the Mustang 6-speed, right? The 2014, the Mustang, and yet the Mustang almost won. It's amazing.
Well, you don't want to give it away. I mean, you just,
Okay, well, we did best 2 out of 3.
Edit.
No, I hate like listening to like YouTube channels and they're like, this video is dropping, next week, so I don't want to spoil it.
But you,
It's all right. You guys listen to us. I appreciate you guys listening to us. I feel like you get kind of the inside, unvarnished look at what we do behind the scenes here.
which is fair enough. Which reminds me, there's a lot of videos that are dropping at TFL Car, TFL Truck. Well, we have 8 different channels, guys. You can go to alltfl.com and find out what's dropping on that particular day, plus a bunch of stories written by on our websites.
Yeah, Andre did something cool yesterday. And this one I'm not going to give away. It'll also be up there. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole is the chief engineer of the Chevy Silverado EV, and Chevy was kind enough to let us borrow it. I think we're one of the first media outlets to have it for 2 weeks. And Andre compared it to an F-150 gasoline with 2 identical trailers, 2 identical loads, seeing which one can tow farther.
Which we did before, which is really cool.
With the Hummer EV.
We did, but we also did
F-150, sorry.
We did it with the F-150 Lightning.
Yep.
And I bet some of you guys are like, well, why didn't you compare it directly to an F-150 Lightning?
Which we will be doing. It's coming.
There you go. So there it is. Guys, we are trying to stay at the forefront of everything that's happening, both with gas and electricity. So stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff coming up. And we're going to sign off now.
Yeah.
But hey, let us know in the comments below how many of you think I'm right, which is most of you, on most of these topics. But nonetheless, also, what V8 would you get if you had 60 grand in your pocket, burning a hole, and you wanted to buy one V8 that you had to hold on to for the rest of your life? What would it be? And by the way, we didn't talk about Mercedes-Benz and all the amazing AMGs that they build with V8s, and not so much the 4-cylinder AMGs that don't make any sense to me, because that doesn't make any sense to me.
I think I would get the R8. I've been kind of jonesing for that. I think it's depreciated enough now, where it's at the bottom of its depreciation. It's
Such
only
an
going to go
amazing
up.
car. Yeah. So really, truly an amazing car.
The only problem is for me and you, it's a little small. It's pretty tight. Remember,
it's a
pretty
little tight, but it
Yeah.
wasn't as bad as like even the Acura, which the NSX. I think is even tighter on the inside. I think this had a little bit more elbow room.
Or I would buy this Lexus. I would buy. Hold on to it.
just-
It's gonna, it's a Toyota underneath. It's gonna.
Well, I mean, what you've got is that V8, that amazing V8, and there's other vehicles that are using it or were using it. Oh, the GSF.
LC, yeah,
That
LC.
GSF I loved. You know me.
I know.
He knows that I was like trying to find a way where I could buy one of these damn things, because the GSF was, to me, the perfect car for anybody who wanted a sedan, because it was a little bit bigger, had more room, great engine, amazing driving dynamics. Yeah, not as fast as some vehicles out there, but faster than a lot of other ones. And boy, was it rewarding. So I forgot about that one. So that's the final one to my list.
All right, guys. As always, go to alltfl.com and feel free to roast me in the comments, because that's how I feel is coming. I'll see you guys next time.
All right,
Ciao.
take care.